Hello guys, this is your friend Dark Fox 2.0. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was hidden god born from Kayuga, and built the ultimate. Say XY Harem Naruto x Hinata x Kayuga Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And no, start a new fanfic. The Shinigami had done and seen many things in its immortal existence, but there was one thing he had never expected to happen. As he sat in a void, contemplating on things very few other beings could understand, he felt a foreign power enter his domain. He recognized it almost immediately. It would be a long time before he forgot that woman. He looked to his side and saw a tear appear in space, a portal opening up and something about to come through. Well, if she thought she could take him, then she would be sorely mistaken. Shinigami paused as a soft voice greeted him instead. Please. I need your help. I know you don't trust me, nor do I expect you, but if you don't, an innocent child will die. The voice soon faded out and the portal closed. Shinigami was silent for a moment before sighing. I had a feeling today would be a bad day. Some time later, unknown location. There it is, my whole story. Shinigami said to his two sisters, Kami and Yami. He had just finished telling them the story of the portal opening up and someone speaking to him. Shinigami was currently in his preferred form, a purple-skinned demonic figure with shaggy white hair and a white kimono. I have no doubt, it was Kayuga. I'd know that voice anywhere. Yami grit her teeth and clenched a fist. Hasn't that little bitch learned her lesson? I should go down there and get rid of her for good. Yami was a woman of incredible beauty, perfect, delicate features fitting a princess in a storybook. She had long black hair, falling down her back like a waterfall of ink, sucking in all light that touched it. Her eyes were yellow with black sclera, containing a coldness that could freeze hell itself. She was dressed in a black kimono, slightly falling over her shoulders and showing off her long legs. She was barefoot, and kept a sword on her hip. It seemed to be as dark as she did. Calm down, you two. We shouldn't do anything rash, Kami said, holding her arms up to placate her siblings. Kami was almost an identical twin to Yami, however her hair and eyes were brown. She seemed to be near the opposite of her sister in every way minus appearance. Her eyes carried warmth and peace, a motherly smile was always on her face, and her elegant white kimono giving her an air of grace and nobility. This may very well be a trap, but why would Kayuga spend what precious little chakra she was able to squeeze together in the seal to contact us? She's no doubt completely powerless right now, so maybe there is some truth to what she says. Yami scoffed at her sister's thought. She's trying to play us. We all know damn well she can't see anything on the planet from her seal, so her little ploy of an innocent child dying is a complete lie. Yami wanted no part of this. Kayuga was a threat. They could not risk her being released. Due to a set of ancient laws, they couldn't interfere with the lives of the mortals on their world. Kayuga may have been revered as a goddess, but she was still mortal, so they couldn't just go kill her if she got out. The humans aren't strong enough to handle her. It'll be another era of Kayuga ruling everything with her damn eye. Shinigami chimed in again. I agree with you, Yami, but Kami also has a point. Kayuga is powerless, so why would she do this? Even if we went to see her in the seal, she has no power. Plus, I could sense no lies or ill intent from her. Both goddesses fell silent at this. Shinigami never misread a person. If he said they meant no harm, they didn't, period. Kami clapped her hands with a smile. Well then. I'll go speak to her and see what she wants. You two watch and if something goes wrong then come help, okay? Without even waiting for a response, Kami disappeared in a flash. Yami groaned, as damn it. Why does she always do that? Shinigami shrugged as the two gods started observing their sister with Kagaya. Inside the moon, Kagaya's seal. Kami flashed into existence in front of the sealed Kagaya. The two were floating in a black void, Kagaya's seemingly sleeping form suspended in the air. Kami walked over and poked Kagaya in the forehead, pushing out a duplicate of the woman, this one awake. Kagaya frantically looked around. Before her eyes landed on Kami, you came. Thank you so much. She bowed low to Kami, further surprising the gods. Please, you have to act quickly, there isn't much time. Kami raised a hand to stop her. Perhaps you can explain what's going on. Now what child needs saving? We know you can't see the world outside of here. Kami may have retained her motherly appearance, but there was steel in her eyes. Kagaya nodded. I'm sorry. You see, when I started turning against Hagoromo and Hamura, I decided I needed something to help me beat them. So I went to my lover Tenji and, well. Kami realized what she was saying and instantly focused on Kagaya's body, feeling another, much smaller life force in her body. I was sealed before I gave birth to him, so he's been suspended in here with me. But the seal is killing him, I can feel it. He's so small and weak he can't handle the seal's power, not even when I'm protecting him. Kagaya turned to Kami with desperation in her eyes and tears on her cheeks. Please save him. Kami was silent, then turned to Kagaya and raised a delicate eyebrow. Why do you care? I was under the impression you wanted all chakra for yourself, so why do you want me to help bring him into the world? Also you seem much more caring than I remember. Kagaya nodded. I think it's the seal. My chakra has been gone so long that, at least this part of me, is back to how I was before I went, well, crazy. She shook her head. I don't care if I spend the rest of eternity in this seal, just help him, please, I beg of you. Kagaya said, bowing to Kami again. All there was in the air was the silence of the void, and Kagaya was afraid her pleas had fallen on deaf ears. Then she heard it. A small gurgle, a squeak, then finally, crying. A baby crying. Kagaya stood up and stared at Kami, who now held a small bundle in her arms. Kami was wrapping it in fine white cloth and smiling down at it. Kagaya stepped forward, but stopped when Kami turned to her. Kami stared at her for a minute before holding the bundle out to her. Kagaya took a few shaky steps forward and took the bundle, looking down into the face of her youngest child. He looked up at her with a pair of Byakugan eyes just like hers, except they seemed to have the barest tinge of blue to them, with a tiny pair of horns poking through his skin at his hairline. He had a tuft of white hair on his head and 3 marks, like whiskers on his cheeks. As she held him, he smiled up at her and reached out to her. Kagaya's eyes widened as a pair of chakra hand constructs came out of his hands and pulled her closer. Kami walked over and giggled a bit. Well, someone's already making trouble. Such lovely eyes, and at such a young age. Pity they need to be sealed away. With a wave of her hand, the horns disappeared. His eyes gained a pair of pupils and turned to a deep sapphire blue, while his chakra was restrained a bit. Kagaya was a bit saddened by the changes, but brought her baby close to her, holding him for a while, and relishing in her one moment of clear thoughts of her family in a long time. Once she was done, she handed her baby back to Kami. Please make sure my little Naruto is safe. Please. Then she disappeared, leaving only the sleeping Kagaya in the seal. Kami held Naruto, thinking of where to take him. Naruto, I like that name. I think you'll do great things in the future, little one. Konoha Streets, midnight. Kami walked toward the Konoha orphanage to drop Naruto off. After thinking a bit, this is the best choice. It was a toss-up between here and Suna, but Konoha would have the resources to protect him after his abilities surfaced. Plus, there was soon to be a little girl here that could use a friend. Kami looked down at the bundle in her arms. You have a difficult life ahead of you, little one. But I have faith that you will grow and become the hero this world needs. Kami arrived at the orphanage, and sat Naruto down on the step, still wrapped in his blanket. She knew this was an iffy decision, given what was going to happen in a few days, but she knew the orphanage and Naruto would be fine, she'd make it so. The fox wouldn't touch this building. Kami sighed as she knocked on the door and stood back, making herself invisible. She was all-knowing, but it was more a curse than a blessing, being able to see death's coming, but not able to stop it. Kami watched as the matron of the orphanage opened up the door and noticed the baby. She seemed instantly taken with Naruto, cooing at him and playing with him. She took him inside and quickly went to work getting him a place there. Kami smiled, hopefully he would grow up to become a fine man. Oh, who was she kidding? She knew exactly what would happen. She couldn't wait. His life was like a good sitcom, or maybe a drama. Kami shook her head and disappeared, informing her siblings of the development. 10 years later, Konoha Streets. Naruto, now 10 years old and standing at 5 feet tall, sighed to himself as he dusted off his shoulder. Another day, another fight. Naruto was wearing a white long-sleeved shirt and black pants with black shinobi sandals. His white, spiky hair hung down over his forehead, and his blue eyes sparkled with amusement. He and Yusaka had been minding their own business when these idiots came out of nowhere and started insulting her. Normally she could handle it, but they were in public, so if she raised a hand to them it could escalate into something ugly real quick. Thankfully, Naruto had no such restrictions and proceeded to mop the floor with them. He walked over and gave a swift kick to the supposed leader of the group. So, you idiots gonna keep bothering Yusaka-chan? Then shook their heads and managed to get back to their feet. Good. Now leave. They quickly ran off, not wanting to anger the white-haired boy again. Naruto turned around and walked over to one of his 3 real friends. You okay? Yusaka flipped her hair with a huff, her long blonde hair swaying in the breeze and violet eyes sparkling. I am absolutely terrible at describing hair, so imagine she has hair like CC from Code Geass. Yusaka was a girl of 10 years old standing at 4 feet 5 inches, wearing an orange t-shirt and a pair of black bicycle shorts under a thigh-length white skirt, finished off with black ninja sandals. I'm fine, you should have let me help. Naruto shook his head and gave her a toothy grin. Ah, then we'd have a mob after us, Yusaka-chan. That wouldn't make for a very fun day, would it? The two continued walking, having been interrupted on their way by the idiots. Yusaka let out a small giggle, then looked over at Naruto, suddenly a bit nervous. Naruto-kun. Why do you still hang out with me? I do nothing but get into trouble, people hate me and call me a demon. So why? She truly didn't know. Other kids her age stayed away from her or left her alone after finding out who she was, but not Naruto. He refused to leave her. Naruto gave her a pointed look. This again. I've told you before, Yusaka-chan, you're my best friend, that's all there is to it. Naruto didn't know why he was so drawn to Yusaka in their early years, but he didn't really care. She needed a friend, and he decided to be that friend, no matter what people thought of her. He knew who she really was, and he'd stick with her through thick and thin. As they walked, they found themselves at the gates to the Hyuga compound to pick up the third member of their group. The guard have them a smile. Naruto-san, Uzumaki-san, 1 second. He left for a minute, before returning with a young Hyuga girl. She had lavender-tinged eyes and short blue hair. She was wearing a simple pair of shinobi pants, sandals, and a t-shirt, covered by a beige jacket. Hello Naruto-kun, Yusaka-chan. Hi Hinata-chan. Ready for our training today? Yusaka asked with a smile. Hinata nodded and turned to wave to the guard, thanking him. Naruto-kun, did you get into a fight already? Hinata asked with a bit of disappointment, noticing marks on Naruto's knuckles. Naruto chuckled nervously and scratched the back of his head. Come on Hinata-chan, you say that like I go looking for it. They were picking on Yusaka-chan, what was I supposed to do? He fidgeted at the disappointed look Hinata was giving him. The brunette then smiled and patted Naruto on the shoulder, never change. Naruto just grinned and nodded. Yusaka's eye twitched as she noticed the blush on Hinata's face. Alright then, we'd best get going, Sensei will probably be annoyed if we're late. The two others nodded and the three headed off to get the last member of their little group. As they walked, Hinata couldn't help but remember when she met her two friends, who saved her life and changed it for the better. Flashback. 4 years prior, Konoha Clan District, midnight. Naruto and Yusaka were walking along the street, having been chased out of the orphanage. Well, Yusaka was chased out and Naruto followed her. Naruto had his arm around the sobbing girl. They people hadn't been nice to her at all, they just decided they had enough of the demon in their orphanage and threw her out into the street. Quote. I'm sorry Naruto-kun. You should go back to the orphanage, I'll be fine on my own. You shouldn't be with a demon like me. Yusaka said through her tears, the pain in her voice enough to break anyone's heart. Naruto stopped and hugged her. Don't ever say that again. You aren't a demon. I have no idea why people call you that, but I don't ever want to hear you saying that again, okay? He gave her a smile and wiped her tears away. Now come on, let's go see Gigi. I'm sure he can help us. I just hope he's not too upset at us for waking him up late at night. Yusaka nodded and he kept leading her through the streets. As they walked, Naruto and Yusaka suddenly stopped. Both of their heads snapped over to the patch of woods near them. Did you feel that? Naruto asked, sensing something wrong. Yusaka nodded, shivering a bit. Someone bad is in those trees. I can feel them. She could sense ill intent, and whoever it was clearly had it in spades. The two noticed a lot of commotion at the Hyuga compound, people running around and yelling being heard over the walls. Naruto narrowed his eyes and turned toward the presence he sensed. Stay here. Then he quickly ran off into the trees. Yusaka yelled after him, but realized he wasn't stopping. She fidgeted for a second, then turned toward the compound and ran over to it. Naruto crept through the trees, and eventually found his way to a clearing, seeing a ninja, not one from Konoha, struggling to handle a small girl about his age. She had her arms and legs bound with a cloth over her mouth. Damn it girl, stay still. He slapped her, eliciting a scream from her. Naruto narrowed his eyes and quickly made his way behind the shinobi. Naruto jumped up and wrapped his small arms around his neck, trying to choke him. The shinobi jumped up, dropping the girl, and tried to shake Naruto off. Then when he realized it was only another kid, he reached back and threw Naruto off. Naruto rolled along the ground, then when he came to a stop got back to his feet, making sure to keep his enemy in sight. His opponent groaned upon seeing him. Damn it, I hate killing kids. You just had to play hero, didn't you? He said with a sneer. Naruto took a deep breath, then gasped as the ninja suddenly appeared behind him. Naruto quickly dodged the stab from behind, and while the ninja was wondering how he managed to, Naruto threw his fist forward, breaking the ninja's nose. He stumbled back, angered at being hurt by some little kid. When he looked up, Naruto and Hinata were running through the trees. He growled and quickly chased after them. He caught up to them rather easily and tripped up Naruto, causing the two children to roll to a stop. Naruto grit his teeth as the ninja approached them. Like I said, I don't like killing kids, but I'll be damned if I don't pay you back for my nose. Naruto was fully prepared to fight back, even with his little chance of winning. He soon found out he didn't even need to. Someone appeared in front of Naruto and quickly sent a palm strike at the ninja's chest. Naruto heard an unpleasant, muffled squelching sound, and the ninja fell to the ground, dead. The man turned to them, his Byakugan deactivating. He rushed over to Hinata and untied her, taking the cloth from over her mouth. Hinata, are you all right? He asked with worry. Hinata nodded with a few tears running down her face. I'm okay too, Sama, he saved me. She said as she hugged her father, looking over to Naruto with a blush. Naruto fidgeted as the man turned his gaze to him. Thank you, my name is Hiashi Hyuga. If it weren't for you distracting him, then Hinata may very well have been lost forever. I am in your debt. The now named Hiashi said with appreciation in his voice. Naruto nodded. It was nothing, sir. He would have said more had Yusaka not barreled through the trees and slammed into him. Ah. Yusaka-chan, what are you doing? He asked as she hugged him with enough strength to make him think his bones were breaking. Yusaka held on as tightly as she could. You idiot. You could have been killed. Do you have any idea what I would have done if you left me all alone? If I hadn't gone and told the Hyuga what we sensed, you'd be dead. Don't ever do that again. She cried, clearly not intending on letting him go anytime soon. Hiashi found some amusement in the sight and cleared his throat, getting their attention. I thank you both for this, and Uzumaki-san explained the situation to me. You two are more than welcome to stay at the Hyuga compound for as long as you wish. Naruto and Yusaka were both surprised, and grateful for his offer. With that, all four of them went to the Hyuga estate for the night to relax after the stressful time. The next few days of political repercussions that followed were definitely not pretty. Hinata needed some help from her two new friends to get over the death of her uncle Hisashi. While Naruto and Yusaka enjoyed their time at the Hyuga compound, they didn't want to impose, so they went to see the Hokage and he set them up with a nice apartment to share. They had quickly become fast friends with Hinata, with her joining their little group. The three finally arrived at their destination, and a silence fell between them. While they loved their last friend, every time they went to meet her, a somber mood fell over them. The three stood outside the Uchiha clan compound, now devoid of all life but two for the last 2 years. The gate slowly creaked open and their last comrade made her appearance, Yuko Uchiha, one of the only two remaining loyal Uchiha in Konoha. Imagine Yuko Kamishiro from Digimon Cyber Sleuth, just younger. She was wearing a black battle kimono and black sandals. Her blank face gained a small smile at seeing them. Hello everyone, I hope you weren't waiting too long. She said in a soft tone. Yuko wasn't exactly expressive with her emotions. Her friends had learned to read her very well, but anyone who just met her would see her as completely cold and stoic. Their meeting with Yuko was arguably more dramatic than their meeting with Hinata. Flashback. 2 years prior, Hokage Monument. Naruto and Yusaka were on their way up to the overlook on top of the monument, their favorite place to relax. The last few weeks had been hard on the village. The entirety of the Uchiha clan had been totally wiped out, by one of their own even. Naruto and Yusaka couldn't even imagine what the only two survivors must have been going through. They were broken out of their thoughts as they saw someone else at the overlook, standing very close to the edge. As they got closer, they saw that it was a girl about their age, wearing a black yukata, tear marks staining her face, bags under her eyes, and a dead look to them. Naruto and Yusaka shared a look before Naruto spoke up. "Hello, are you okay?" The girl turned and glanced at them, before returning to looking over the village. "Please leave me alone." She looked down to the ground and took a shaky breath. Naruto's brow furrowed as he stepped forward. "Well, if you're about to do what I think you are, then I can't do that." She stepped a bit closer to the edge. "Don't get any closer. I know what I'm doing." "Are you sure about that?" "I don't think throwing yourself off a mountain will fix anything that you're going through," Yusaka asked, not really knowing what to say. The girl turned to them, with fresh tears welling in her eyes. "It'll make the pain stop. I won't have to see it anymore. I won't have nightmares anymore." Yusaka narrowed her eyes. "Oh, come on, it can't be that bad. You sure you aren't just overreacting?" Naruto turned to her and gave her a WTF look. Instead of getting angry like Naruto thought, the girl simply stared at Yusaka. "I watched my big brother, who I idolized, slaughter our parents in cold blood, then heard him kill every single other member of my family and torture my brother." Naruto and Yusaka's eyes widened. So that's who she was. Yuko Uchiha. "I keep reliving it every night. That horrible sight replays in my head constantly. So no, I don't think I'm overreacting." Naruto held his hands up to placate her. "I'm very sorry for her. She talks before she thinks sometimes." He walked a few steps closer. "I know what happened to you was terrible. But don't you think it's a bit early to go now? You have your whole life ahead of you. You need time to grieve, talk to a therapist, but don't throw it all away like this. Don't you also have a brother? Won't he miss you?" She shook her head. "He hasn't talked to me since it happened. I have nothing anymore. This pain won't stop and I can't get the images out of my mind. This is the only way to stop it all." She turned to the cliff, and just as she seemed like she was about to jump, Yusaka spoke up. "You're pathetic." Naruto's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates, and even Yuko seemed surprised. They both turned to Yusaka, who was glaring at her. "You're thinking of killing yourself because it's the easy way out. You'd rather die like a coward than live and become stronger. It's pathetic." Yuko finally showed some emotion as she turned to Yusaka with anger in her eyes. "How would you know? What have you gone through in your life? You don't have any idea what I feel, so don't call me pathetic." She raised her voice, and Naruto was about to intervene, until Yusaka spoke again. Yusaka had shot forward and grabbed Yuko by the collar of her kimono. "I can call you pathetic because that's what I thought of myself." Naruto stopped and decided to let Yusaka keep talking. Yuko was surprised at her words. What did she mean? Yusaka kept glaring at her. "I can't count the number of times I was in the same position, thinking it'd be easier to end it all than to live in this damn world. Do people call you a demon? Did they beat you, starve you, and curse your very existence?" Naruto had no idea Yusaka had actually thought about doing that. She was always so full of life. "No matter what happened, that's what they do to me, and if I didn't have Naruto-kun in my life, I would have thrown myself off this mountain years ago. I get it. You feel like nothing will ever make you happy again, like you're drowning in darkness. The light at the end of the tunnel is getting smaller and smaller and you don't think you'll ever get there. Yusaka let go of Yuko and backed away a bit. If you want to run away from life then fine, just don't act like you're the only one who suffers. Yuko stood in stunned silence for a few minutes, and Naruto was afraid things were about to go south very fast. Yuko's shoulders shook as her tears started flowing freely. I can't. What if I lose everything again? What if I do have a life and family, then they all leave too? I can't do it. Yuko dropped to her knees sobbing. Yusaka's eyes softened. Then get strong enough that nothing can hurt the people you love. You have no clue what life has in store for you, so don't throw it all away. Yusaka held her hand out to Yuko, hoping she would take it. Yuko looked up into Yusaka's eyes, her sobbing calming down a bit. Yuko took Yusaka's hand, then looked over to see a grinning Naruto place his hand on her shoulder. They led her away from the cliff and sat with her for a minute. She eventually fell asleep on Naruto's shoulder. The two jumped when an Anbu with a bear mask appeared in front of them. Nice job you two. I was about to step in and get her away from the edge myself. He chuckled at their surprised look. Hokage-sama isn't stupid. He knew Yuko and Sasuke would be traumatized by this, so he had us keep a watch on them. Let's go see him. We'll need to get her some therapy sessions set up. He then looked to Yusaka, maybe some for you as well. Yusaka shouted indignantly as the Anbu led them to the Hokage Tower. Present time, Hokage Tower. The four kids knocked on the door to the Hokage's office, and after hearing the voice from the other side, walked in. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, looked up from his paperwork and gave them a smile. He made a sign and an Anbu appeared in front of his desk. He had gravity-defying silver hair and a Inu mask. The Anbu looked at them and spoke in a slightly lazy voice, "You for sure you can handle this? It's gonna be incredibly tough." He pulled out an orange book and flipped it open, ignoring the girls' annoyed looks. Naruto nodded. You bet we are Inu-sensei. We can take anything you throw at us. The four had been training with their sensei for about 3 years now, with Yuko joining after they met her. He was originally one of Yusaka's guards, but decided to give them a few tips, which eventually turned into full-on training sessions every day. Inu had brought it up with the Hokage, and they'd decided to make use of an old and rarely used law for advanced genin. If a jonin or higher found a group of kids who they thought had potential, the jonin could train them, and once they reached a certain level, they could take a test to become genin without needing to finish or even go to the academy. This was the first day of their real training. Hiruzen chuckled. I have faith that you four will make us proud, just try not to hurt yourselves. He saw all four of them like his own grandchildren, and he truly hoped they could handle this. They were all very talented, but becoming genin so young would put large targets on their heads. Truthfully, this might be for the best. He didn't know how Yusaka would handle the academy, or if the teachers could be trusted to train her accurately. The only one he could trust was Iruka Yumino, who would be teaching them basic school knowledge in addition to their shinobi training. In all honesty, while Yusaka was a special case who definitely needed special attention due to her tenant. He couldn't help but feel like Naruto would also need some attention. He and Inu knew there was something special about him. They had at first thought he was royalty. The cloth he was wrapped in when he was left at the orphanage was of the finest quality, something only nobles could afford. They first suspected when they were watching the 2-3-year-olds play in a training ground. They got to talking about business and didn't notice Naruto managing to climb a tree and falling. They turned just in time to see him slam onto the ground on his neck, enough to snap a normal child's neck. However, Naruto was completely fine, he just sniffled a bit and went about his playing. After that they took him to the hospital for a checkup and discovered several amazing things. He was much more durable and much stronger than a normal child his age. The nurses had to work to get a needle into his arm to take a blood sample. Speaking of his blood, the doctors didn't know what, but there was something strange about it. The one thing that stunned them was that he had absolutely massive chakra reserves, a match for even Yusaka, who was a chakra capacity monster. The both of them on their own had cage-level reserves. Of course it was a double-edged sword, they would have to work on control their whole lives. Hiruzen watched them walk away with a smile. One thing was for sure, they would do great things, he could see it already. Training Ground 7, 2 years later. Naruto, Yusaka, Hinata, and Yuko were sitting in their usual training ground, waiting for their sensei. Today was finally the day they'd be taking their test to become genin. It was a bit surreal to them. The other kids their age would be starting the academy in a week, and they couldn't be more nervous. All they'd done was train with Inu-sensei, so they had no idea how strong they actually were. They were nowhere near being able to beat him. Suddenly, said Anbu appeared in a swirl of leaves. Well, my cute little students, are you ready for your test? They all hopped to their feet and swallowed their nerves, ready to do what they had to do. Inu was soon followed by the Hokage and the Shinobi Council, Inoichi Yamanaka, Sum Inuzuka, Skikaku Nara, Shuza Akamichi, Shibi Aburame, and Hiyashi Hyuga. All the clan heads were fairly excited to see this. An advanced genin test hadn't been done since before their parents were clan heads, and this was a special group, the Hyuga heiress, the Uchiha heiress, potentially, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, and an orphan with incredible talent. Hiruzen also noticed that Danzo Shimura had also decided to turn up to the test. He narrowed his eye at his former teammate. Inu put his book away and dropped into a stance. No gimmicks this time, it's a straight test of your combat abilities, so come at me with everything you have. Inu barely had time to finish his sentence before having to dodge a kick from Naruto. The white-haired boy engaged Inu in a taijutsu battle, throwing everything he had at him. Inu blocked a few hits, then grabbed Naruto's arm and tossed him away, just in time to avoid a Juken strike from Hinata. Once Naruto rejoined the battle, Inu quickly realized there were two members of the group who hadn't joined in yet. He knocked Naruto and Hinata away before looking to Yusaka and Yuko, only seeing a wall of shuriken coming toward him. Hinata quickly dashed to Naruto, who'd just finished a chain of hand signs, Doden, Doryuheiki. A small wall of earth rose up to protect the two from the cloud of metal. Inu sighed and pulled out a pair of kunai to deflect the shuriken he couldn't dodge. As he made his way through the wall of shuriken, he noticed something larger coming toward him. It was Yuko running through the cloud with two Fuma shuriken, throwing them at Inu, then going through a few hand signs. He dodged one Fuma shuriken and managed to deflect the other. As Yuko was preparing to launch her technique, Inu heard a pop behind him, and turned to see one of the Fuma shuriken turning into Yusaka, who was finishing her own hand sign. Yusaka took a deep breath and blew out a large blast of air, Futon, Daitapa. Yuko took her own breath and launched out a stream of fire, Kaden, Ruka no Jutsu. Oh, Inu said to himself as the two attacks collided where he was standing, creating a massive blast of fire. When the blast cleared, Inu was nowhere to be found, and all four of his students quickly sprung into action, not quickly enough unfortunately. Naruto felt something grab his ankle, then groaned as he found himself with only his head sticking out of the ground. Inu pulled himself out of the ground and immediately went on the offensive, taking on the three girls in a taijutsu battle. Naruto grit his teeth as two other Yusaka showed up to help get him out. Yusaka and the others managed to push Inu away, with Naruto joining them a few seconds later. The Shinobi Council was very impressed with what they saw. Damn, they sure don't mess around, do they? Sume asked. Shibi nodded in agreement. They are genin level from what little we've seen. They possess the ability to come up with strategies quickly and work very well off of each other. Though given Inu-san's heavy lean toward teamwork, I wonder if their individual skills are up to an appropriate level. Hiruzen gave a nod to Inu, who held his hand up to stop his students. All right, now let's add a little bit of spice to the match. Each of you come at me individually so we can practice one-on-one sparring. Hinata first, then Yuko, Yusaka, then Naruto last. Inu then reached up and removed his mask. He was wearing a face mask and had a scar over his right eye. His scared eye opened to reveal a single Sharingan. I'll say again, come at me with everything you have, I know you can do more. His four students nodded and stepped back as Hinata moved forward, moving to a unique Juken stance. Hiyashi gave a small proud smile. Shukaku Nara raised an eyebrow. Isn't that the stance Hanako used? Hiyashi nodded. Hinata's body wasn't suited to the traditional Juken, so I helped her to learn her mother's version. She's grown by leaps and bounds since then. They all watched as Hinata activated her Byakugan and charged at Inu, throwing palm thrusts and poking strikes at an impressive speed. Inu was forced to dodge. Even a single strike from her could do major damage. Then he managed to grab Hinata's arm and threw her up into the air, throwing a few kunai after her. Hinata thrust a hand out, sending a burst of chakra into the air that knocked the kunai off course. When she landed, she took a deep breath and threw her arms out to the side, a pair of chakra scalpels appearing over her hands. Hinata went back to fighting Inu, who was forced to be even more careful to dodge. Suddenly, Hinata abandoned trying to hit him and jumped up, grabbing Inu's shoulder, using him to vault over. Hinata thrust her palm forward, hitting Inu square in the back, or at least she would have if he hadn't been swapped out with a log. Hinata felt cold steel on the back of her neck. All right, I think that's enough for now, nice job Hinata. Inoichi let out a whistle. Chakra scalpels. Does she want to be a medic? Hiyashi gained a fond smile. She's always been interested in medicine, and when she found that technique she decided it's make a good addition to her repertoire. Yuko walked over to replace Hinata across from Inu, giving the brunette a small smile. Yuko took a second to close her eyes and breathe, before going through a rapid chain of hand signs, Kaden, Hosenka no Jutsu. Firing off a barrage of small fireballs. Inu jumped to the side and ran onto the small river in the training ground, then went through his own hand signs, Sweden, Sujinheki. A wall of water appeared around Inu, blocking the rest of the fireballs. When Kakashi let the water fall, he was greeted with the sight of Yuko flying toward him with a flaming punch. He blocked it, and let out a grunt at feeling the fire burn his arms, then pushed Yuko off. The Uchiha landed on the water, steam coming off the surface as fire chakra appeared in wisps around Yuko. Yuko took a deep breath, and the council noticed waves of heat and even a bit of fire exit her mouth as she let the breath go. The Ravenet resumed her fight with Inu. This time small bursts of flame accompanied her kicks and punches. Inu sighed as he once again was forced to only dodge. However, he soon found an opening to grab Yuko's arm. The girl tried retaliating with another punch, which was also grabbed, Gonna have to try something else, Yuko. Said girl allowed a small smile to work its way onto her face, and Inu immediately released her and jumped backward as a large gout of fire flew from Yuko's mouth. Inu raised an eyebrow as he landed. I certainly wasn't expecting that. How long have you been trying to work that out? Yuko blushed a bit. I've been working on it for the past year. Well, you're nearly out of chakra, so let's call this one, alright. Yuko nodded and walked back to her friends, passing Yusaka on the way. Hiyashi raised an eyebrow at Hiruzen. That fire technique she used at the end looked almost like the Juken. The aged Hokage chuckled. She calls it, Hai no Karada. Yuko has an astounding fire nature, the strongest I've ever seen. Unfortunately, she has almost no talent in every other element. She changes all the chakra in her body to fire-natured chakra, and using some theory from Juken, creates those fiery attacks. She can also build the chakra in her stomach, not unlike using any other fire jutsu for a blast of fire, like you saw. Shuza gave a hearty laugh. I can already see it, the dragon of Konoha, I like it. Danzo, who had stayed silent the entire time, chose that moment to speak up. How long has she had her Sharingan? Everyone turned toward him with surprise, then looked to Yuko, who was glaring at Danzo with, sure enough, a fully matured Sharingan. Here's inside. Yuko-chan was hoping to keep it a secret for a while longer. She awakened it the night of the massacre. The reason she kept having the incident repeated in her head over and over was that her Sharingan had activated and memorized the entire thing. She still wasn't used to it, nor did she know she could do it until her therapy sessions with Inoichi. Inoichi nodded, taking everyone's attention. Part of her therapy was to confront her memories of that night. I asked her to describe how she remembered feeling. As she talked, reliving the night, I noticed her eyes shifting between black and a dark red. I asked her to channel chakra into her eyes, and there they were. I believe Inu-san is responsible for their growth though. Danzo nodded and went back to watching the spar. Yusaka had been trading blows with Inu for a while, but she quickly disengaged and pulled out a sealing scroll, biting her thumb and activating it. A katana popped out of the seal. It was simple, but of good quality. Yusaka drew it and started battering Inu's kunai with a flurry of blows, pushing the Anbu back. After Inu regained his footing, he started on his own strikes, each of which Yusaka either blocked or deflected. Sum looked a bit confused. She's playing a bit more defensively than I thought she would. Given her personality, I thought she'd be trying to take Inu's head off. The Hokage smirked a bit. Her style is normally very aggressive. As if to punctuate his words, after Inu let up for a second, Yusaka went back to hammering him with blows. She likes to wear down her opponent, making them slip up, then when they do. Sure enough, Inu's kunai was forced out of his hand, and Yusaka thrust her katana forward toward Inu's throat. Inu wasn't an Anbu for nothing, however, as he pinned the sword between his palms, forcing it to the side to miss him. Inu kicked her away and jumped back to gain some distance. Yusaka smirked as they threw a pair of shuriken, followed by a few hand signs, shuriken kage bunshin no jutsu. In a puff of smoke, the two shuriken multiplied into dozens. Inu readily deflected them, then dodged a Fuma shuriken, before turning around and grabbing the wrist of the Yusaka it had turned into. Inu teased at her and shook a finger. Did you really think that'd work a second time? Yusaka smirked. Nope, but I thought this would. Yusaka started to glow with a white light, Bunshin Daibakua. Inu quickly kicked her away as the clone went up in a large explosion, throwing him back a bit. Inu landed hard on the ground and looked up to find Yusaka standing over him with her katana at his throat. He sighed and waved his hand, making Yusaka smirk as she walked back to her team, giving Naruto a high five along the way. Shuza gained an appreciative look. Well, looks like the rumors about her chakra capacity were true. Shibi nodded and turned to Hiruzen. I believe that Naruto is the most interesting one here. He isn't from any known clan, nor does he have the special assets Yusaka possesses, so I'm very curious to see what he can do. The others silently shared his curiosity. Hiruzen was silently thinking, it might be better to just get it out in the open now. Alright, what you're about to see can't be revealed to anyone. We'll want to keep this a secret for as long as we can. As everyone looked to him curiously, Hiruzen called out to Naruto, use them all. No need to hide it anymore. Naruto gained a face-splitting grin at hearing those words. Once it became clear the Hokage wasn't going to elaborate, everyone turned to the field. Naruto started off with an offensive technique, Doden, Doryuso. He slammed his hands into the ground, sending a wave of earth spikes at Inu, who quickly jumped into the air to avoid them. As he was in the air, Inu noticed Naruto smirking as he finished another set of hand signs, Raiden, Jion. A bolt of lightning shot from Naruto's mouth, headed straight for Inu. Inu's eyes widened, before he gripped his wrist, channeling his own lightning chakra into his hand, Reikiri. He used his own lightning-covered hand to deflect the blast away from him, silently cursing himself for teaching Naruto so many ninjutsu. He didn't have time to dwell on it though. As soon as he landed, Naruto was upon him, throwing powerful punches and kicks. Shikaku, who was actually paying attention for once, gave an impressed laugh. Not a bad strategy, and he's pretty strong to be able to use a B-class Raiden technique with such precision. Hiruzen chuckled a bit, just wait until you see this. Inu finally managed to fend off Naruto's assault, only to realize there were 5 clones surrounding them in a circle. Naruto quickly ran away, and Kakashi realized all the clones were doing different signs, oh me. Doden, Doryuso, Raiden, Jion, Futon, Daitapa, Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, Sweden no Jutsu. Each clone sent a different technique toward Inu, who stood there for a second before they hit. A massive explosion erupted in the training ground as the techniques collided, the council even needing to shield themselves from the wind kicked up by it. After the dust settled, Naruto stood for a minute, wanting to make sure he almost got me Naruto. If I hadn't substituted with a clone, I could have been in real trouble there. Naruto spun around to see Inu standing there. I can't help but think you went a little overboard though. Naruto gave his own smirk. Well, if it wasn't big and loud, it wouldn't be a very good distraction now, would it? Inu raised an eyebrow, then felt a telltale poke of a kunai on his back. Inu gave a shrug. Can't argue with that. Nice work, Naruto. While Inu checked his students over, the Hokage was on the receiving end of some pointed looks. Naruto possesses a very high affinity with all 5 elements. I is surprised as well. Sume shook her head in disbelief. That's impossible, to have all 5 natures be that strong. Hiyashi crossed his arms, yet we've just witnessed it. Hiruzen gave them all a serious look, especially to the thinking Danzo. This can't be spread around. If this knowledge gets out, Naruto-kun could be in serious danger outside the village walls. Many people would stop at nothing to have someone with his ability. The council all nodded, but Danzo kept his contemplating look. After the 4 were all checked over, Inu stood at attention in front of the council, with his students lined up next to him. Hiruzen walked over to them and cleared his throat. After examining and testing you 4, the council has unanimously decided that you pass with flying colors. he said with a proud smile. Naruto, Yusaka, Hinata, and Yuko all smiled with happiness and pride as Hiruzen reached into his pocket and pulled out 4 Konoha Hitai. I never doubted you 4, and I know you'll make me proud. He handed them their proof of triumph before turning to Inu. I think they've earned a reward, Kakashi. Kakashi nodded with a hidden smile and turned to his 4 new genin. Now that I'm your sensei and will be a regular jonin again, my real name is Kakashi Hatake. Pleasure to finally meet you face to face. Hinata deadpanned a bit. You're still wearing a mask, sensei. Said Anbu gave his signature eye smile. Oh, well, if you wanna see beneath it. He reached up to the mask and brought it down, to reveal another mask underneath. It's another mask. Yusaka's eye twitched. I can already tell this is gonna be annoying. Yuko smiled a bit, and turned to Naruto. Where should we go to celebrate? Naruto thought for a minute. How about ramen? As soon as he said it, Yusaka took off in a blur toward their favorite stand. Hey. No fair, damn it, Naruto said as he ran after her. Kakashi sighed and waved to Yuko and Hinata. We'd better get there before they eat the Ichiraku family out of house and home. Ichiraku ramen, sometime later. Yusaka happily slurped up a mouthful of her favorite food, relishing in the greatness that was ramen. The owner of the stand Tsuki brought out Kakashi's bowl and laughed at Yusaka's usual gusto. Eat up you 5, it's on the house tonight, to celebrate out favorite customers growing up. Ayame walked out of the back with a smile. I can't believe you 4 are genin already. You haven't even set foot in the academy. She gushed as she moved around the counter to give them all a large hug. Oh, it seems like only yesterday Naruto and Yusaka first came in here. The Ichiraku family would always have a special place in Yusaka's heart. They were the first people after Naruto to treat her like a person. Flashback. 7 years ago. A 5-year-old Naruto walked into the ramen stand. He headed up to the counter and spoke to Ayame. Excuse me, can I have 2 bowls of miso ramen to go please? He asked as he handed her his money. Ayame was surprised to see him come in all by himself, but figured he lived close by. She took the money with a smile and started on the ramen. As she did, she couldn't help but overhear some things other customers were saying. Isn't that the boy who's always around the demon girl? She must have tricked him into being friendly with her. That poor boy needs someone to set him straight before something bad happens to him. Ayame noticed the anger on Naruto's face, and was about to say something until Tsuki walked in. I think we have a rodent problem. I swear I just saw something run behind a dumpster in the alley. He said before going back to the kitchen. Ayame thought for a minute before turning to Naruto. You can go get your friend, I swear we won't hurt her. Naruto's eyes widened a bit. He stared at her for a minute before leaving the stand. Ayame sighed, thinking he just left. Then he see back, leading a blonde girl his age, who seemed very scared to be there. The customers went dead silent as they noticed Yusaka, who flinched at the attention. Tsuki walked back up. What happened? It's quiet as a grave up here. He then noticed Ayame asking the anxious Yusaka what she wanted to eat as the 2 kids sat on their stools. When Yusaka noticed him staring, she thought she was about to be kicked out, so she made to hop off the stool. Tsuki quickly stopped her. Oh no, you're more than welcome here. I was just surprised as all. The other customers started making a fuss, calling Yusaka a demon and asking why Tsuki would allow her in the restaurant. Get out, all of you, now. She's a hungry little girl, not a monster. Now leave. The customers were up in arms, but left nonetheless. Yusaka was wide-eyed as she watched the scene. Thank you. Naruto smiled. happy that they finally had a place they could go that wouldn't kick his friend out. As the five celebrated into the night, Hiruzen sat in his office, preparing for a hard day. He'd promised himself he'd tell Yusaka about her burden and her mother when she became a genin, and now that day had come. He would wait until tomorrow. He didn't want to ruin their celebration. This would be a hard blow to the girl. She'd always wondered who her family was, and he'd had to lie to her every time. She'd suffered so much because of a burden she'd never asked for, and it probably wasn't going to get better anytime soon. Hiruzen sat back in his chair, holding onto a scroll with the Uzumaki seal on it. I'm getting too damn old for this. The next day, as Naruto and Yusaka were on their way to the Hokage monument, Yuko was sitting at the dining table of her family home, waiting for her twin to get up. She needed to tell him about her becoming a genin. He knew she trained with friends, but she still hadn't told him about the test or the advanced genin training. She and Sasuke had grown apart after the massacre, and they rarely spoke to each other. Yuko wanted their brother to pay for what he did, but Sasuke seemed downright obsessed with it. He never wanted to train with her. No matter how many times she invited him, pretty much the only times they were together were breakfast and dinner. Yuko would cook something for them and they'd eat in mostly silence. She had tried to make conversation, asking him about his day, his training, but he'd just grunt and shrug her off. Yuko didn't want to lose her relationship with her twin, but she was finding fewer and fewer reasons to hold on to it. Sasuke seemed content to train the whole day. He never started any conversations with her. Speak of the devil, Sasuke walked into his room and grunted in acknowledgement. They ate in silence, then after they'd finished Yuko spoke up, Sasuke, I need to talk to you about something. Sasuke just grunted. Not now, we should be training for when we enter the academy. He started for the door. That's just it, I wanted you to know that I won't be going to the academy. She was about to explain, but didn't have a chance. What? Sasuke yelled as he turned around and glared at her. What do you mean you aren't going to the academy? Yuko flinched a bit. Sasuke, calm down, just let me explain. Explain what? That you're leaving me to avenge our family by myself. That's not what I'm doing. Please just listen to what I have to say. He turned back to the door and took a breath. I don't want to hear your excuses. I should have known this would happen. I can't count on anyone but myself. If you want our family's murderer to go free, then fine. Sasuke, I want Itachi to pay as much as you do. Yuko pleased as she reached out to his shoulder. Sasuke slapped her hand away. Don't say it. A voice in his head pleaded with him. If you say it, we might lose our only family left. Maybe you should have jumped off that cliff. He felt a pang in his heart as he said that and walked away. He quickly buried it. He didn't need her. He could do this on his own. Yuko stood there in her once happy home, her hands over her mouth as tears streamed down her face. She couldn't remain standing and collapsed into a chair, softly sobbing to herself. Hokage's office. Yusaka and Naruto stood in front of Hiruzen. So, what do you need, Gigi? Yusaka asked, not liking the melancholy look on the old man's face. Hiruzen sighed and looked her in the eyes. I'm very sorry, Yusaka-chan, but I lied to you. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What do you mean, Gigi? Lied to her how? Yusaka was just as lost as he was. Hiruzen merely handed her a picture. It was of a beautiful red-headed woman with violet eyes. She was wearing a red kimono, and was clearly very pregnant. The two stared at it for a minute, Yusaka going through everything she'd asked the Hokage or that he'd told her. She focused on the eyes, something about them was familiar. Then it clicked. They were her eyes, the same ones she saw in the mirror. Yusaka looked at her pregnant belly, then dropped the photo, letting it flutter to the floor. Yusaka's eyes watered as she looked up at Hiruzen. Is that my Ka-san? At Hiruzen's nod, tears flowed freely from Yusaka's eyes and Naruto went to hug her. Why? You told me you didn't know who my parents were. You knew how much I wanted to know, so why? Yusaka asked through her tears as she clung to Naruto. Hiruzen looked down in shame. I can never tell you how sorry I am, Yusaka, but it was one of your parents' last wishes. I wouldn't tell you about them until you reached certain ages or ranks. If anything were to ever happen to them, then you were to learn about your mother when you became a genin, and your father when you became a chunin. Naruto and Yusaka had moved to sitting on the couch in Hiruzen's office. Why would they do that? Naruto wondered aloud. Your mother was named Kushina Uzumaki, the last living member of the Uzumaki clan. They lived in the nation of Uzu no Kuni, but were wiped out by a few other villages decades ago. They were feared for their sealing prowess and incredible strength. Since you would be the last Uzumaki if she died, your mother wanted you to be old enough to understand what it meant. Hiruzen paused to let them absorb the information before continuing. As for your father, he had, and still has, many enemies. Enemies who would kill you without a second thought if they knew who you were. So when you make chunin, or turn 18, I will tell you about him, of that I promise you. Yusaka watched as he picked up a scroll, about the size of a summoning contract. It had waves on the border and the Uzumaki seal on the front. This seal was left to you by your mother. It contains all the techniques, fuinjutsu notes, and weapons to be recovered from Uzu. They belong to you now, Yusaka-chan. Yusaka bit her thumb and swiped her finger over the seal, opening the scroll. Her eyes were immediately drawn to a seal labeled, Yumi. Yusaka channeled some chakra into it and out popped a beautiful katana. Its handle is wrapped in dark purple cloth. The tsuba was in the shape of a five-pointed star, with intricate carvings all over, and the sheath was made of fine lacquered wood, painted black. Yusaka drew the blade from its sheath, marveling at the sword. It was gleaming like liquid silver, but the cutting edge seemed to have the barest purple tint. It's beautiful. Hiruzen nodded. This is Yumi, one of your mother's swords. Her other sword, Akumu, was never recovered. He let Yusaka sheath the sword before continuing. As much as I'd love to stop here, there is one more thing to be addressed. The reason people call you a monster. He instantly had Yusaka's attention again. I'm sure you know about the Kyubi attack 12 years ago. What they don't tell children in school is that the Yondaime couldn't kill the fox, he could only seal it away. Though it's not that simple, the Kyubi could only be sealed into an Uzumaki. They are the only ones with a strong enough body to contain it. Furthermore, only a child would work, because their body would be able to adapt to the Kyubi inside them. Hiruzen began. Stop. Yusaka said, it was me, wasn't it? I have the Kyubi inside me, don't I? That's why everyone hates me. Hiruzen sighed once again. I'm sorry, Yusaka. Were there any other option, the Yondaime would have taken it in an instant. The Yondaime wanted you to be seen as a hero, treated with respect. I felt that people wouldn't think that way, so I tried to keep your status a secret. Unfortunately, someone let it slip. You should know one more thing. Your mother was the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi before you. Yusaka's eyes widened as she held Yumi close to her. When a female Jinchuriki gives birth, their seal is weakened. I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what happened, but the Kyubi broke free, and your mother wouldn't have survived taking it back into herself, so you were their only option. Yusaka was silent as she processed everything. She then let out a hollow chuckle. So it's true. I really am a monster. Naruto turned her head to him. No, you are not. How many times do I have to tell you to stop saying that? It doesn't matter what you have inside you, your Yusaka, the Kyuubi is just your tag along. You didn't ask for this, so don't you ever start thinking of yourself as a monster or demon ever again. Yusaka sniffled as her tears returned. She nodded her head as she leaned it onto Naruto's shoulder. As hard as it may be to believe, becoming a Jinchuriki may have been for the best. Seeing their unbelieving looks, Hiruzen elaborated, when you were a baby, you were born with a long-thought incurable and very rare birth defect. You were very weak and frail, even touching you was dangerous. You could barely move and even the slightest touch seemed to bruise you. It was only after a month in the high-security wing of the hospital that you showed improvement. I was running myself ragged trying to get my old student Tsunade Senju to come back and see if she could help you. I thought if anyone could find a way to cure it, she could. However, it wasn't needed. Doctors I trusted confirmed that the Kyuubi was healing you, making you stronger and healthier. When you were 3 months old, you were as healthy, or maybe even more so, as any other child your age. Truth be told, if the Kyuubi wasn't sealed into you, you may not have lived to see your first birthday. Even if you'd lived by some miracle, you would have been in a wheelchair, needing around-the-clock care for most of your life. Yusaka and Naruto seemed to be stunned by that. Yusaka was incredibly strong, in more ways than one. If there was one thing that Yusaka hated with a passion, it was being called weak. Anyone who did was met with swift, anger-fueled, revenge. Yusaka couldn't imagine a world where she couldn't be a shinobi, or one where she would be restricted to a bed her whole life. Well, maybe the big fox is good for something. Hiruzen took a minute to let them think on everything he'd said. I am sorry for hiding this from you. Would you ever be able to forgive me? Naruto and Yusaka looked at each other, with Naruto giving her a reassuring grin. Yusaka stood up gripping Yumi. I'm still mad at you for lying to me and hiding things from me, but I get why you did it. It was my parents who wanted these things kept from me until now, so I'm more mad at them, not a lot though. Gigi, did they want me? She asked with hesitation. Hiruzen dropped to his knees and put his hands on her shoulders. Yusaka-chan, the day your mother and father found out they were pregnant with you was the happiest day of their lives. They both gave their lives to protect you, and if they could see you now, they would be more proud of you than I could possibly imagine. I can still remember how giddy Kushina was. She didn't want to know anything except that her baby, or babies, were healthy. She wanted to be surprised in every way possible. The aged Hokage hugged Yusaka for a minute, then released her. Their bodies were never recovered, but if you want to visit your mother's grave, it's in the clan section of the cemetery. There's a special Uzumaki plot next to the Senju plot. Now, I think this has been a rough time, so why don't you two head home now? Also don't forget to be here for your first mission on Monday. The two nodded and left, Naruto with his arm around the shoulder of the still sniffling Yusaka. Konoha Residential District. Well, today's been kind of a shit show, wouldn't you say? Naruto asked as he and Yusaka walked back to their apartment from the cemetery. They weren't there for long. Yusaka had simply stared at the grave for a minute before leaving in silence. Said blonde nodded, yeah, but at least I know why everyone hates me, and I learned I did have parents, and they really wanted me. She was a bag of mixed emotions, and she was too emotionally exhausted to deal with it. Right now she wanted to sleep. Unfortunately, she wouldn't have the chance as they arrived at their apartment door to find Yuko sitting on the ground next to their door, an all too familiar look in her eyes. Yusaka quickly dropped next to her. Yuko-chan. What happened? Yuko looked over to her with tear stains on her cheeks. I can't go back there. I can't go back to the compound again. Naruto walked over and unlocked their door. You take her inside and take care of her. I'm gonna go get Hinata, we might need her for this. Hinata had taken what they'd called a mom role in their group, always scolding them for things and comforting them. Yusaka nodded as Naruto sped on his way to the Hyuga compound. 20 minutes later found all 4 members of Team 7 sitting in Naruto and Yusaka's kitchen, Yuko slowly sipping at a cup of tea, having just told her teammates what happened between her and her brother. Yusaka was on the warpath and headed for the door. I'll kill him. I'll hang him by his entrails. Yuko quickly grabbed her arm. Please don't, Sasuke is just angry, I'm sure he didn't mean it. I'll talk to him after he's had a chance to cool down. Yusaka sighed but relented. Yuko gave her a small smile and sat back down. I'm sorry to impose, but could I stay with you two for a few days? Naruto took a sip of his own tea. Of course, you can stay here for as long as you'd like. They had no shortage on room, especially since they slept on futons. Their apartment was pretty good sized. The kitchen, dining room, and living room were all one large room, with a counter to separate the kitchen from the rest of it, and stool chairs on both sides so it could act as a dining table if desired, which was how they were sat down now. The living room had carpeted floors while the entire rest of the house was hardwood. Speaking of the living room, a large bit of it was taken up by a gray sectional sofa. The two sections were at a right angle to each other and facing toward the rest of the apartment. There were a couple chairs, a coffee table, and a TV. Off the living room was a small hallway leading to the bathroom, and a small library, study room on the right side, and the bedroom on the left. Lastly, the walls were painted a warm cream color. I'll go grab one of the extra futons for you. With that, Naruto headed back to the bedroom. Hinata looked around the apartment for a minute. Now I feel a bit left out. With you three living here and me at the Hyuga compound, she said with play sadness. Yusaka rolled her eyes. Well, you're welcome here too. I've heard of some cases where teams moved in together to bond. Maybe you could convince your two-san to let you stay here for a few days every week. It was clear by the look on Yusaka's face that she wasn't taking no for an answer. The next Monday, the 4 members of Team 7 had all woken up bright and early at 6 a.m. to get ready for their first day as an official team. Yusaka had cooked up a large breakfast for them and they were all ready to meet Kakashi-sensei at the Hokage Tower at 7. They had all finally put their hitaites on, Naruto's around his right arm, Hinata's around her neck, Yusaka's on her left arm, and Yuko's secured to her waist. Once they were all dressed and ready to go, they headed to the Hokage Tower and waited for their sensei. They waited some more. Okay, he was doing this on purpose. After 3 hours of waiting, Kakashi finally showed up, now wearing the standard Jonin uniform, with his eye covered by his headband. Yo! He tilted his head to the side to dodge a stab from Yusaka. Hey now! What's with the violence? Yusaka pointed Yumi at him threateningly. You're 3 hours late, what the hell? Hinata, Yuko, and Naruto were also glaring at him. Kakashi merely smiled. Sorry, I guess I got a little lost on the road of life. His student's eyes twitched and he let out a small chuckle. Well, if everyone's ready, then let's head inside and get started. You 4 must have been bouncing off the walls this morning waiting for this. Once they started into the tower, all annoyance at their sensei was lost, their heads now filled with visions of the amazing things they'd do. Naruto had been hunting his prey for a while now, stalking through the streets and keeping his eyes open for any candidate. Then, after what seemed like hours, he found the perfect mark, so he set to work. He pulled out a scroll and unsealed its contents, carefully crafting his tools and making his plan. He walked over to the edge of a building, calculating his approach, and after seeing his quarry distracted, decided to act. He created a clone and made it henge into a random form, sending it along with its supplies. Naruto held his own weapon and waited for his time. A particularly arrogant merchant was strolling through the Konoha market district as if he owned it, pushing people out of his way and degrading the local stores. He would get his comeuppance though, of that Naruto was sure. Once everything was in place, his clone acted. The merchant yelped in fright as someone threw a balloon filled with neon blue paint at him, covering his back. Ah! Who did that? I demand to know. However, he found everyone was just as surprised as he was. He took a step to track down the vandal, but stepped on a conveniently placed rake, comically flying up and smacking him in the face. He reeled and ended up falling over onto his back. Naruto could barely hold his grin in place as he hefted the pie in his hands, carelessly tossing it into the air, for the final touch. There was silence in the market as everyone watched the merchant groan in pain. All was dead silent for a few seconds, before a pie fell from the sky and landed square on his face. That did it. The entire market erupted into laughter, Naruto himself having to hold his sides as he cackled like a madman. The pie to the face always gets him. I don't care how old it is, that shit's funny. Naruto spent the next few minutes rolling around on the rooftop, before lying on his back, watching the clouds as the last few laughs left him. He'd originally started pranking on Kakashi's orders. He called it stealth sabotage training. Really, he just wanted them to help him get back at a guy who'd given him a raw deal, but Naruto discovered he had a taste for it. Whenever he had a day off and needed some laughter, he'd go looking for some asshole to prank. He had changed a lot in the last 4 years of his genin career. For one thing, he'd grown taller, now standing at an even 6 feet tall, and his hair had also grown. His white spiky locks now fell down over his forehead, with the back falling to the back of his neck. Imagine Dongai Ichigo's hair from Bleach as a base. He was wearing a simple white long-sleeved shirt under an open navy blue zip-up jacket with red trim, his hitai still tied around his arm. On his lower half, he wore black shinobi pants tucked into a pair of black shinobi sandals. Basically his, Naruto, the last, outfit, with the mentioned color changes and relocated headband. To finish off his outfit, wrapped around his neck outside the jacket, was the white cloth he was wrapped in when he was left in the orphanage. He'd used some of his mission money to have it turned into a scarf. Naruto supposed he wanted to keep the thing because it was the only link to whatever family he had, at least he thought it was. As Naruto stared up at the clouds, he heard someone clear their voice beside him. Naruto sat up and turned to see Hinata standing there with her 12-year-old little sister, Hanabi. The Hyuga heiress had certainly grown up. All 3 of the girls had become more womanly over the years, but Hinata certainly had more luck. She stood at 5 feet 5 inches, and her hair was now longer, reaching down to mid-back in a Harem-style cut. She was wearing a black and yellow outfit, consisting of a sleeveless martial arts top, calf-length black pants, and black shinobi sandals. To top it all off, she was wearing a white jacket with blue trim and the Hyuga emblem sewn onto the right shoulder, her hitai around her neck, and black gloves. Her outfit is like Faye from Digimon Cyber Sleuth, just midriff covered, the sandals, and not as Conforming to her, Hanabi was wearing a simple green yukata as she tried to stifle her own laughter. Hinata gave Naruto a deadpan look. Imagine my surprise when I was taking Hanabi-kun to the market on my day off and I see you pulling another prank. Naruto gained a sheepish grin. Ah, come on, Hinata-chan, if you'd seen this. He was cut off as Hinata appeared in front of him and hit him in the chest. Ow. What was that for? He moaned, rubbing the spot she'd hit. A light glare was what answered him as Hinata held her finger up, like she was talking to a child. No swearing in front of Hanabi-chan. How many times do I have to tell you that? Hanabi giggled a bit at their antics. It's not like I don't know what they're saying, Oni-chan, plus Yusaka-ne is a lot worse than Naruto-ni. Last time she took me to lunch, she taught me a ton of curse words. She then stiffened as Hinata rounded on her with her patented, big sister glare. Hinata stood up and placed her hands on her hips. Well, you aren't going to repeat any of them, are you? Hanabi quickly shook her head. Good. Now then, after we get done at the market today, I need to go have a talk with Yusaka-chan about teaching you to curse. Hinata seemed to realize something as she turned back to Naruto. Where is Yusaka-chan anyway? Doesn't she like to help you with these? She went to go talk to Gigi. She wanted to know if her Ka-san left behind any tips on how to use their chains. She's trying to figure out more creative ways to use them. Naruto answered as he resealed his pranking supplies. We're gonna meet at home, then start our little party once Yuko brings the food, you remembered right? Of course. I wouldn't forget our monthly get-together. After saying that, Hinata felt a tug on her sleeve and looked down to see Hanabi with a hesitant smile. Hinata didn't have a chance to speak before Naruto. Of course you're invited to, Hanabi-chan. We wouldn't leave you all alone in that stuffy compound. The young Hyuga nodded with an excited smile. Maybe next time you and me have some time I can teach you how to pull off stuff like this. Hanabi cheered with a pumped fist as Hinata sighed, rubbing her temples. Well, at least you didn't paint the Hokage monument again. She conceded. That was a mess, ninja chasing him and Yusaka all over the village, and the Hokage giving them a stern talking to about vandalizing a tribute to the village's heroes. Naruto shrugged. Yeah, that one didn't pan out as well as I'd hoped it would. I like seeing the faces of the people I prank, and the people around it. When we did that, I didn't get to savor the faces of all the people who looked at it for the first time. Granted, the guys chasing us were pretty hilarious, but it got old real quick. I see. I've been thinking of them as just chains, meant for restraining, but I could use them to stab, defend. Maybe I should think of them more like spears than chains. Yusaka said to herself. She was currently standing in the Hokage's office, and had just finished listening to Hiruzen talk about some of the ways her mother had used her chains. Yusaka had grown in height the least of her friends, standing at 5 feet 2 inches. Her blonde hair now reached down to her butt, and her features had gained a sharp elegance to them. Her temper had more than grown though, it had become legendary to the people who knew her. It took quite a bit to get her completely steamed, but when she was everything within a 5-mile radius got the hell away. She was wearing a modified Miko outfit with the metal plate from her Hittite sewed onto the right side of the chest, and the Uzumaki spiral sewn onto the left. Instead of a pair of hakama, she was wearing a mid-thigh length red pleated skirt with a pair of bicycle shorts of equal length, wide open-toed stockings that went up to just below the knee, black fingerless gloves, and a pair of sandals like Naruto's. Lastly, Yumi rested on her left side, secured with an orange sash. The aged Hokage smiled fondly at her. I have no doubt you'll figure out how to make those chains a valuable weapon. The Kongo Fusa is an incredibly versatile technique, and mastering it won't be easy, but I have faith you can do it. The blonde bowed to Hiruzen and was about to leave, until someone burst through the door, tossing a kunai at the Hokage. Yusaka quickly drew Yumi and sliced it out of the air, then realized it was just made of wood, and not even sharp. Then a young boy, about 12, ran into the room. "This time I've got you, old man." Yusaka was about to interfere, but he got tripped up on his scarf and fell face first into the ground. Yusaka blinked a few times wondering what was happening before he got up. The boy looked around in embarrassment before his eyes landed on Yusaka, who was just sheathing Yumi. "Hey, you tripped me. Don't you know not to interfere in a one-on-one battle?" Yusaka took Yumi from her sash and bopped him on the head with its sheath. "You tripped over your own scarf, kid. What are you even doing here? Shouldn't you be in school or something?" As she spoke, a Jonin appeared in the doorway, wearing the standard uniform minus the flak jacket, a bandana, and round black glasses. "Honorable grandson, please don't run off like that." He quickly bowed to Hiruzen, who was somewhere between amused and exasperated. "I am terribly sorry, Hokage-sama. I'll endeavor to keep your grandson in line in the future." A delicate eyebrow rose as Yusaka eyed the kid before looking to Hiruzen. "This kid's your grandson Gigi?" Hiruzen nodded. "Yes, he is. Yusaka Uzumaki. Meet Konohamaru Sarutobi. Who I believe should be in class right now." The now named Konohamaru crossed his arms. "Great, now that she knows who I am, I'm gonna have to deal with the bowing and the apologizing and the—" His thoughts were cut off as he felt himself get bopped on the head by Yumi once more, this time with a bit more force. Yusaka ignored the Jonin's shocked panic. "If Hokage-sama is your grandfather, then you should understand the importance of his job. Don't go bothering him with pointless interruptions." She turned back to Hiruzen with a little bow. "Thank you for your time, Gigi. I'll see you later." With that, the blonde Jinchuriki headed out, leaving the three in the office, though Konohamaru's eyes followed her with curiosity. The Jonin bowed to Hiruzen repeatedly. "I am so sorry about this, Hokage-sama. I assure you I will take full responsibility for everything and will not let that girl go unpunished for laying hands on the honorable grandson." He rambled for a bit before Hiruzen stopped him. "Ebisu, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but—" Ebisu followed his gaze, finding Konohamaru missing. As he freaked out for a second, Hiruzen sighed. "I believe he went out after Yusaka-chan." The now panicking man promptly bolted out of the room. Hiruzen let out a little chuckle. "Well, at least my days are never boring. Maybe Yusaka will be good to Konohamaru-kun." His head was then filled with visions of Konohamaru insulting Yusaka, and the angry sword-wielding blonde chasing him through the village like a cat with a mouse. Well, at least he'll survive. As Yusaka walked through the village, she became increasingly aware of someone following her, badly. She sighed. She still had a few hours before she was to meet Naruto and Yuko, so what the hell? She turned around and walked over to a box painted like a rock with 2 eye holes and promptly kicked it over, revealing a surprised Konohamaru. "Rocks aren't square, nor do they have eye holes. Now why are you following me?" Konohamaru got over his surprise and stood, giving her a smirk. "You're just as strong as I thought. I want you to train me, and I won't take no for an answer." "No." He face faulted as Yusaka walked away, not even sparing him a glance. He quickly got up and followed her. "Come on, please. I don't want you to train me all the time, just teach me a few things, please." Yusaka pinched the bridge of her nose. "Why do you want me to teach you? Don't you have that Jonin as a private tutor or something?" She was starting to think this was one of those arrogant kid situations. Because you're the only person who doesn't look at me differently. Okay. Maybe she was wrong. Everyone treats me like royalty or something because the Hokage is my grandfather, but I hate it. People don't see me as Konohamaru, they just see the Hokage's grandson. You didn't though. You knew who I was, but you treated me like you would have anyone else. I wanna get strong enough and become the Hokage so people will know who I am, not who my family is. Ebisu goes easy on me and coddles me, so I need you to train me, please. Yusaka stopped and turned to him. There was certainly a fire in his eyes. She stared at him for a minute before continuing her walk. Konohamaru looked down in defeat until he heard Yusaka's voice, "Are you coming? We can't very well train in the middle of the street." Konohamaru looked back up with surprise, before it was replaced with a smile, and he ran to catch up to her. Training Ground 7. When the two arrived at the training ground, Yusaka turned to her new student. "First things first, a piece of advice from someone who knows a bit of what you're going through. I won't tell you why, but a large number of people in this village think of me as a monster, and they have since the day I was born." Konohamaru's eyes widened. "While I don't know exactly how you feel, it's close enough. People don't see Yusaka Uzumaki when they look at me." After seeing his nod and making sure he was listening, Yusaka continued, "There will always be people who see you as your grandfather's grandson, and not you. People will see what they want to see and you can't change their mind. Even if you become Hokage, some will continue to compare you to Hokage-sama." Konohamaru didn't look happy with what she said, but he was still listening. The key to dealing with them is to say simply, He was clearly taken aback at her choice of words. If they refuse to see you for who you are, then you don't need them in your life, and they don't deserve your attention. Instead of trying to make everyone acknowledge you, find the special people in your life who do know you, friends, family, they are the ones you need. As long as you have those few precious people, then you will be more than fulfilled. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?" He nodded, then looked up at her with a determined look. "Yeah, I do, but I still want to be the Hokage. Even if people don't acknowledge me, I want to protect my home." Yusaka gained a small smile. "There's nothing wrong with that, it's a fine dream. Still, being Hokage is much more difficult than you know. It's not all about strength. Sandaime-sama is the Hokage not just because he's strong, but because he's wise, intelligent, and knows that he needs to do whatever it takes to protect the village. Just keep what I said in mind, okay?" She then turned to the tree line. "You can come out now, I know you're there." Konohamaru jumped as Ebisu dropped into the training ground. "I suppose I shouldn't be surprised you noticed me. Many shinobi in this village have been talking about your team's exploits," he said with a small smile before looking to Konohamaru. "I would like to apologize, Honor Konohamaru. I had thought I was just showing proper respect, and I didn't notice how much you disliked it. I suppose I wasn't training you to the best of my ability because I was afraid of pushing you too far. How about we start over? My name is Ebisu," he said as he held out his hand. Konohamaru grasped it and shook with a smile. "Konohamaru Sarutobi. Nice to meet you." Yusaka smirked to herself. "Well, looks like my work here is done." As she walked away, she called over her shoulder with a wave, "I expect you to have that hat on soon, Konohamaru." Konohamaru waved back at her. "Thanks, Aneki. I'll make you proud." Yusaka stopped walking for a second. "Oh, by the way, my team and I are having a little party tonight, you wanna come?" Konohamaru talked with Ebisu for a minute before running over to her. The blonde Jinchuriki headed through the forest toward her home with Konohamaru, content with how her day had gone so far. Ah, is the kid getting soft? The blonde girl grimaced as the demonic voice entered her ear. I have nothing to say to you, Kyubi. I thought we'd established our relationship last time. You are stuck inside me, and will allow me the use of your chakra when I need it to ensure our continued survival. We don't need to banter. Humph, you're no fun. At least I could get a rise out of your mother. I remember out deal perfectly well, Kit. I have no wish to die, I promise you. But just remember, if you slip, I'll be right here, all too happy to take over. Kyubi said from the seal, clearly annoyed at not getting her angry. You remember, Fox, if you ever try to take me over or hurt my friends, then I'll come into that seal and kill you myself. Yusaka said with a steel edge to her voice. Kyubi's resulting chuckle was sinister. I look forward to it. You okay, Aneki? Konohamaru asked. He'd seen her face become hard and serious as the grave. Yusaka shook her head and gave a small smile. Sorry, just had some unpleasant thoughts drift through my head. Yuko Uchiha was in a pickle. Pickle sounded good. She was currently sitting at a small table and staring at the menu of the Akamichi family barbecue restaurant. There were so many choices, each one looking more enticing than the last. Yuko's mannerisms hadn't changed much. She still didn't talk much, and when she did, it was in a soft, low tone. She had grown to a respectable 5 feet 6 inches, her hair was hanging down to between her shoulder blades, and her features had only improved. Yuko's new outfit consisted of a black and white sleeveless dress with a white fur collar that went down to mid-thigh, with black skin-tight pants underneath. She was also wearing black fingerless gloves, a black and white ribbon around each arm, black ninja sandals, and her hitai around her waist like a belt. Her looks are still based on Yuko Kamishiro from Digimon. Cyber Sleuth, I just really like the designs in it. I tried to rethink her normal outfit into something more befitting a shinobi, since I couldn't picture her in my head wearing anything else. Hopefully it works, might change it later if it doesn't though. Her musings were interrupted as Chozo walked over to her with a knowing smile. Having trouble choosing again, Yuko-san. Seeing her dejected nod, he chuckled. If you want, we can do party orders. They have a bit of everything on them, so you don't have to decide between anything. Ah, that sounds great. Thank you, Chozo-sama. She said as her eyes sparkled. Chozo laughed and put a hand on her shoulder. No problem, and please, just Chozo when we're out of the official setting. He took on a joking tone as he walked back toward the kitchen. If I didn't know better, I'd swear you were a secret Akamichi. Yuko smiled at the joke before looking around the room while she walked over to the counter near the entrance to wait. Soon, however, she heard a small group enter the restaurant. I still don't see why we have to celebrate like this. It's too troublesome, a lazy voice drawled. The last female Uchiha turned to the entrance and saw who could only be the second-generation Inoshika Cho walk into the restaurant, now sporting brand new hitai. It was very surreal for her, to know that they probably just passed their genin exams, yet she'd been one for 4 years. Maybe she should go and congratulate Sasuke. Soon, one of the team members noticed her and walked over. Hello, Yuko. Getting lunch like us? Choji asked with a friendly smile. He had met Yuko a little less than a year ago while she was having dinner, and instantly challenged her to an eating match, which he then lost. After that, he seemed to have a bit of a crush on the black-haired girl, though it went away after a bit and they were now on pretty friendly terms. Yuko nodded. Hello, Choji, I'm just waiting for a party order. My team and I are having a little get-together tonight. While he knew she was a genin, he assumed she graduated a year before them, and Yuko simply didn't correct him. She hated to seem like she was bragging. Are these the members of your new team? Choji nodded and waved them over. Yeah, the three of us are Team 10 as of today. We just got out of class and headed here to celebrate. This is Shikamaru Nara and Ino Yamanaka. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Yuko said with a little bow. Ino, who had been looking between them for a few minutes, decided to speak up. So, how do you two know each other? She asked with a conspiratory gleam in her eye. I first met Yuko when she was in here getting lunch about a year ago, and when I saw her skill, I had to challenge her to an eating competition. Choji explained with a fond smile. Ino seemed mortified, and even Shikamaru was surprised. You challenged her to an eating competition. Choji, what were you thinking? I mean, look at her. That figure is to die for. Why would you do that? She then turned to Yuko. Speaking of which, what kind of diet are you on? Because it must be amazing. Choji lowered his head. Shame, she bested me. Shikamaru's head snapped up as he stared disbelievingly at Choji. Ino's face much the same. I'm sorry. What was that, Choji? The Nara heir asked. The Akamichi heir's fist was clenched. She ate me under the table. I never stood a chance. He picked his head up and with fire in his eyes pointed dramatically at Yuko. However, I have been training. I challenge you once again, Yuko, and this time I shall not lose. Yuko merely nodded. Okay. 15 minutes later. Shikamaru Nara was a smart guy. Hell, most people would call him a genius. His ability to process information was second to none in his class. However, the sight that lay before him sent his mind reeling. He couldn't fathom what he'd just witnessed. Choji had fallen back, staring up at the ceiling, barely able to move from the sheer amount of food he'd eaten. However, that wasn't what stunned him. No, what got him was the fact that Yuko was still eating. The Revenant finished off another plate of barbecue, and put it at the top of a 2-foot-tall stack next to her. I think I'm full now. Ino's jaw was on the floor as she stared at Yuko, who didn't even look like she'd gained anything from it. She couldn't hold it anymore. How in the hell can you possibly eat that much? What kind of insane workout plan do you put yourself through to eat that much and keep that figure? Yuko shrugged. I don't know, I've always eaten like that. I don't do anything extreme in my training, I guess I just have good genes. Ino's eye twitched as she turned away and pouted. Shikamaru sighed. Troublesome. Sorry about that, she gets this way about her appearance. Choza walked over with a large doggy bag, setting it down next to Yuko. There you are, Yuko. I have to say, even I'm impressed with how much you can put away. Yuko smiled in thanks and stood up, grabbing the bag. Thank you, Choza-san. Please put the bill for this in the contest on my tab. It was nice meeting you, Shikamaru-san, Ino-san. She gave them a wave as she left, waving to Choza. On her way back to the apartment, she passed the Uchiha compound. As she walked past, the door opened and Sasuke walked out, wearing his new headband. Oh, Sasuke. I wanted to congratulate you on graduating. My friends and I are having a party, do you want to come? She asked with a genuine smile. Sasuke didn't spare her a glance and jumped to the rooftops, clearly intent on getting away from her. Yuko sighed. After their little altercation 4 years ago and she'd moved in with Naruto and Yasaka, they'd grown even more apart. Yuko tried to talk to Sasuke, but he always ignored her and refused to acknowledge her presence. Because of that, he never saw her hit I-8, which would at least made him talk to her. Yuko knew it wasn't entirely his fault though. She should have told him about the advanced genin program, she should have dragged him to therapy with her. He always seemed so strong when they were kids, she thought he just needed time and he'd be alright. She tried to talk to him whenever she saw him, and visited him in the compound from time to time, but to no avail. She would have pushed harder to get closer to him, but there was a reason she didn't. She tried to talk to him and be there for him, even before she told him she wasn't going to the academy, but he wouldn't have it. She tried to get back into his life, but he wasn't letting her in, and she wasn't going to force her way in if he didn't want her there. Still, she was going to try talking to him whenever she saw him, and if he decided he wanted to be a family again, she'd accept it with open arms. Yuko shook her head. She needed to get these sad thoughts out of her head, she had a party to get to. Why do I have to do this? Naruto asked as he was forced to carry tons of bags from dozens of stores throughout Konoha. He was currently weighed down as Hinata picked through a clothes rack, taking her time in picking different outfits. 2 reasons. Firstly, you need to be taught a lesson for trying to pass on your pranking ways to Hanabi-chan. Secondly, you agreed to help us as we went shopping. She said as she held out a dress for Hanabi to look at. What do you think? Hanabi thought for a minute. I don't think orange is your color. That's probably more Yusaka-ne's thing. The smaller Hyuga answered. Hinata looked at the dress for a second before putting it back. Yeah, I suppose you're right there. Naruto cleared his throat. I remember agreeing to help you look for some things, but not to be the damn pack mule. He yelped as Hinata appeared next to him and chopped his head. Ow. Come on. Damn isn't even a real curse. Another chop greeted him as he wisely decided to stop talking. The Hyuga princess looked at all the bags and sighed. Alright, let's take pity on poor Naruto-kun and pay, then we'll drop this stuff at home and head to the apartment. Naruto let out a sigh of relief as Hinata walked over to the counter with Hanabi. Thank God for my durability and freakish strength, or my back might be broken. Naruto thought to himself as he carried the massive amount of bags to the Hyuga compound. When the 3 arrived, the guards sent him sympathetic looks and let them in. He set the bags down in Hinata's room as Hiashi walked past. What did he do this time? Hanabi giggled as Naruto rolled his shoulders. He pulled a prank on someone and started cursing. Naruto turned and gave her a mock glare. Hinata patted Naruto on the shoulder. Well, not so much for the prank. I agree the man deserved it, more for trying to teach those things to Hanabi-chan. Now what have we learned, Naruto-kun? Naruto grumbled to himself, but answered, don't curse around Hanabi-chan or try to turn her to the path of pranking. Hinata smiled and patted his head. Before turning to her father, is it alright if Hanabi-chan goes with us to our party tonight? The smaller girl pulled out her puppy dog eyes technique. Hiashi rolled his eyes. You don't have to do that, Hanabi-chan, you're free to go. Just remember to call me if she stays the night. He said, with his last comment directed to Naruto and Hinata. Don't worry too-san, we'll have her home on time if she's not too tired. With that, the 3 headed off to meet Yusaka and Yuko, or at least they would have, if they weren't stopped by someone. Having fun with your friends, Hinata-sama. If only we could all be so lucky. Hinata stopped and turned toward the voice, seeing her cousin, Neji Hyuga. Naruto growled, you got something to say, Neji, you can say it too. Hinata placed her hand on his chest, stopping him. Please Naruto, take Hanabi-chan and head to the apartment without me. She gave him a pleading look. Naruto sighed and gave Neji a glare before leaving with Hanabi. Neji raised an eyebrow, sending your attack dog off. How things have changed. Neji ni, must we always do this? I've said it more times than I can count. I'm sorry for what happened to Hazashi Oji, but I was 6 years old. Hinata pleaded. I don't care how old you were weak and you always will be weak. It's your fate, just like my fate is to be branded by this seal. I don't know how you lucked out in passing the advanced genin test, but someday we'll see which of us fate favors, and I assure you, I will not be holding back. Neji said coldly as he turned to walk away. Neither will I. Hinata's soft voice barely reached his ears, but when he turned around, she was gone. As Hinata left the compound, she saw Naruto and Hanabi waiting by the wall. I thought you two were heading to the apartment. Naruto shrugged. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Well, thank you. I know you don't like Neji, but he wouldn't just attack me like that. I don't care how long it takes me, I will help him out of that delusion of fate, and heal my family. Hinata said with determination. She felt a hand land on her shoulder and looked over to see a smiling Naruto. Well then I'll be right there with you. Hinata nodded, a small blush staining her face. Hanabi then grabbed their sleeves. Come on guys, we're gonna be late. The two rolled their eyes as they headed off. On the way, Hanabi let go of them and Naruto fell a bit behind the group, opting to take his time. He stopped as a sharp pain entered his chest. Naruto grit his teeth and put a hand on his chest. Damn. It's happening again. They're getting more frequent. He held his chest for a minute before the pain subsided. Naruto shook his head, taking a few deep breaths before catching up with his teammate. Team 7's apartment, 30 minutes later. Cheers. Chorused out as the 6 people tapped their glasses together. Team 7, along with Konohamaru and Hanabi, were all taking various spots on the large couch, with the food all spread out along their coffee table, with a couple extra folding trays brought out to hold it all. After they all arrived, they got right to work getting everything all laid out for their little party. By the time they got started, the sun was starting to set. All of them were wearing what they'd call their mission casual clothes. Naruto and Hinata had ditched their jackets. Yusaka set Yumi on its rack in their room, and they'd all removed their sandals and gloves, if they had any. Konohamaru seemed nervous at first, but quickly found that Yusaka's team were more than welcoming to him. Naruto sighed to himself as he drank down a few gulps of soda. Shame Kakashi-sensei couldn't be here tonight, that Jonin meeting came out of nowhere. Yusaka waved it off. We'll make it up to him another night, plus you know he's not too much of a party guy. That caught Konohamaru's attention. Your sensei. He must be really strong if he taught you. Ebisu said a lot of shinobi know you guys. Naruto nodded with a grin. Oh yeah, sensei is really tough. We've been training with him for about 10 years now and none of us can beat him. Hinata chuckled at Konohamaru's face. Well, it's to be expected, he is a Jonin after all. When we team up on him he has to take us seriously, but he still manages to pull out a win every time. The younger Hyuga took a sip of her juice and picked up a piece of barbecue. I saw one of their spars once, it was intense. I nearly got sent flying. They spent the next few hours talking about the academy, and Konohamaru eventually asked about some missions they'd been on. Yuko looked up from her piled high plate. We haven't done anything glamorous if that's what you're wondering. Yusaka leaned back in her seat with a sigh. We've done escort missions, delivery missions, bodyguard duty, but nothing really dangerous happened, other than the odd bandit attack every now and again, but they're child's play for us now. Popping a piece of takoyaki into her mouth, Hinata took over for her. Hokage-sama said he wanted to give us low-profile missions until our age group became genin as well. If we did higher-profile missions while we were still young, we would have had every power-hungry jerk from here to Iowa after us. Konohamaru took on a thinking expression. What do you mean, while you were still young? Didn't you guys graduate last year or something? Naruto sat back down. Nope, we've been genin since we were 12, took the advanced genin test. Whaaaat. Konohamaru screamed as he stared, bug-eyed at them. We talked about that in class a while ago. That test is supposed to be super strict. Nobody's done it in years because no jonin could find kids with enough potential. Yusaka bopped Konohamaru with her hand. Stop screaming, you're gonna give me a headache. Kakashi-sensei met us when we were 6, and after teaching us a few things, decided to make it a regular thing. When we turned 12, we took the test and the council approved us. She thought for a minute. Speaking of which, does Iruka-sensei teach your class? The boy nodded with a bit of a surprised look. Yeah, do you know him? The resident Uchiha answered that one. Yes, he was in charge of teaching us stuff like math, history, and geography. Every day after the academy got out, we'd finish out training with sensei and head there to meet Iruka-sensei for a couple hours of school. Konohamaru was silent for a few minutes, then got up with stars in his eyes. You guys have to teach me. Please show me some tricks. Another hand slammed into his ear. Yusaka's smile was a bit strained as a smoking dent appeared in Konohamaru's skull. What did I tell you about yelling Kono-kun? Hanabi was barely able to contain her giggles as Hinata shook her head at their antics. You guys have a lot of fun, Oni-chan. Hinata gave her a nod. That we do, Hanabi-chan. A few hours later, I rolled out a couple spare futons for him. They're out like lights. Naruto said as he made 2 pairs of clones, 2 to take the sleeping Konohamaru and Hanabi and set them down on a spare pair of futons in their room, and 2 to tell their parents. The white-headed boy plopped down on the sofa and sighed in relaxation. It sure had been a wild ride, hasn't it? Hinata took a sip of her tea. If you mean our unique training and careers, then yes, it certainly has. The blonde of the group put an arm around Hinata and poked her cheek. You've certainly grown up, haven't you, Hinata-chan? You were so cute when we first met, always blushing and stuttering. The Hyuga heiress eye twitched as she turned to Yusaka with a sweet smile. What about you? If I remember correctly, you rarely left Naruto-kun's shadow. I always thought it was adorable how you held onto him ever so tightly. Lightning seemed to flash between them as they stared at each other. Naruto's sweat dropped as Yuko sat back down next to him, a freshly made plate of food in her lap. I'll never understand why they do that. They can be best of friends 1 second, then be arguing and competing the next. It's just how they are. Yuko said with a small smile. Yeah, so, how was Sasuke? Naruto chuckled as Yuko turned to him in surprise. You had that look in your eye when you got here. Yuko sighed. He still won't talk to me, but I'm not going to give up on him. I wasn't going to tell you to. Just remember, if he says anything unfriendly to you again, then come to me and I'll teach him how to speak to his big sister. Naruto growled. Naruto, I'm not even that much older than him, it's only 5 minutes. Yuko said with an amused look. Also, thank you. She always felt nice knowing how protective he was of them. Naruto leaned back with a grin. No problem. Bad. Yuko snapped as she smacked his hand, which had been moving toward her plate. She finished her food, then walked over to her girlfriends, chopping them on their heads. Yusaka blinked and groaned a bit. for all you do, Hinata. I think Yuko is the real mom of the group. The Uchiha was always breaking up their arguments, with a Sharingan-enhanced glare if need be. Hinata looked indignant. I don't try to be the mom, but someone has to be the responsible teammate. Yuko looked around at her teammates. What should we do now? We ate all the food. Yusaka walked into the kitchen and patted Yuko's shoulder. You ate all the food, Yuko-chan. But I know something we can do. She gained a mischievous smirk and channeled some chakra into a seal on her wrist, creating a small puff of smoke. If you guys aren't ready to go to sleep, I have these. She said with a flourish as she held up 2 large bottles of sake. Hinata stood up and stomped over to Yusaka. Absolutely not. We aren't drinking. Where did you even get that anyway? The blonde shrugged. Old enough to kill, old enough to buy booze. She then quickly set them down and pulled out 4 saucers. Now come on, now that the kids are asleep, let's get the real party started. How about we don't? Drinking like this is completely irresponsible. Yuko-chan, Naruto-kun, please help me convince her. Her eye twitched violently as she saw Naruto and Hinata pick up a saucer. Naruto grinned at Hinata. You don't have to if you don't want to, Hinata-chan. We'll have some and put the rest away, it'll be fine. Hinata sighed. Fine, but I am not having this. I want you 3 to know that I am completely against this and very disappointed in all of you. She scolded and sat down on the couch, crossing her arms and legs. 1 hour later. Yano Yusaka-chan. You're one of my bestest friends in the world. Hinata slurred as she leaned against Yusaka, who was equally sloshed. I really love you, Yusaka-chan, and Naruto-kun too, and Yuko-chan. Yusaka nodded. I love you too, Hinata-chan. I may give you a hard time, but I love you like a sister. Yuko, who had her head in the refrigerator, looked up, and wobbled over to Naruto. Naruto-kun, we're out of food. We're all gonna starve to death. Alright, Yuko-chan, go find some food. You always seem to find some when there isn't any around. Other Yuko-chan, inform Gigi of this disaster. Naruto said as he pointed to Yuko in an empty space next to her. Yuko gave a shaky salute, and went back to the kitchen. Soon, Hinata looked around the apartment. Hey! Where'd Yuko-chan go? Yusaka stood up on shaky legs, dragging Hinata with her. I don't know. Yuko-chan. Yusaka called out into the apartment. She then gasped. What if she was captured? Naruto-kun, help us look for Yuko, she's missing. Naruto downed another saucer of sake and hauled himself up, missing. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go find her. He took a step and fell onto the floor. The 2 girls burst into laughter as they held each other up. Naruto-kun, you're so drunk. Yusaka got out through her giggles. No, I'm not. I'm not drunk. I'll prove it. Naruto stood up, and his eye caught something on the floor. There. He yelled with an audible gasp. Yuko-chan's saucer. She must be close. Hinata's eyes widened as she saw it. Wow, he's right. Naruto-kun, you're so amazing at this. She then took a long swig straight from the bottle, before passing it to Yusaka, who drank her own large helping. The 3 drunken genin stumbled over toward the kitchen. Yuko-chan. Yusaka called into the kitchen. Naruto finally turned around the counter. I've found her. He called to his companions, who walked over to see Yuko curled up in a ball on the floor, sleeping soundly with a smile and a blush on her face as she cuddled a loaf of bread. The male of the group leaned down. Yuko-chan. We've been searching for you for hours. Come on, we're getting you home, girl. Just after Naruto finished speaking, he fell forward onto his face. Soon the sound of snoring was audible. Wow, What a lightweight. Hinata said as she poked Naruto with her foot. Yusaka nodded. Yeah, well, more booze for us, Hinata-chan. We'll drink all night long. Yeah, the two called in unison. 1 hour later, Kakashi Hatake looked around the apartment, surveying the damage. Yuko was peacefully snoozing with a loaf of bread in the kitchen, her legs huddled up to her chest. Naruto was on his knees with his face planted in the floor next to her. Well, the kitchen was in one piece. He turned his eye to the living room. Yusaka was lying on her stomach over the back of the couch, and Hinata was lying peacefully on her back, covered up and sleeping like a kitten. The only thing to tell you she was hammered was that her blanket was the overturned coffee table. He sighed to himself. Well, at least the only thing out of place is the coffee table. Should I take them back to their room? Nah, I'll let them sleep like this, maybe they'll learn to drink responsibly. He walked over to the door, passing the one remaining sake bottle, which was still half full. He blinked before picking it up and leaving with it. When his friend Anko had informed him she'd seen Yusaka buying 2 large bottles of strong sake, he decided that he'd head to the party after the meeting after all. Of course, he'd let them all get sufficiently smashed before going to see the hilarity. Unfortunately, he missed it, and was